Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard video, and today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the new Imperial Guard Sentinel model that has been revealed by Games Workshop. Now, in case you missed it, Games Workshop did a whole boatload of reveals last week for the new Imperial Guard models that are coming out, and I'm going to put a link down in the description to the Warhammer community article that covers all that, so you can go and check that out at your leisure. Now, what I like to do with these deep dive videos is go through in minute detail and look at all of the new features that you can find on these models, comparing and contrasting them to the old ones, and maybe going over any indications of their rule set based on what we can see on the images shown to us by Games Workshop. So if that all sounds like great fun, then stick around, strap in, and without further ado, let's dive straight into this video. So let's start by taking a look at the two Sentinel models that we've got in front of us here. So Games Workshop has now confirmed that there will be both a Scout variant and an Armored variant. I personally think that a lot of people who didn't like the Armored variant are going to really enjoy the Scout variant. It very much feels like a bit of an improvement and just a glow up on the old original model. I know a lot of people are big fans of the original model, but I think the Scout variant really does look very good. And if you weren't a big fan of the smoother, overly armored look of the Armored one, I think the Scout one should appeal to you. Now let's take a look at the top of the model and work our way down. And the very tippity top of this model is a new aerial system. So if you look at this, this is the new aerial system, very different to the one that we originally had. The original Sentinel kit came with two rather thin aerials, sort of bulbous tops at the end, whereas this one appears to have one long, very tall aerial, and then a more aerial sort of ring that's similar to the new Voxcaster one that you find on the infantry kit. So I really like this new aerial design, although I suspect it's going to suffer from something that all aerials do, which is it's going to snap off after a few times in the carry case. What I would do to try and mitigate this is almost preemptively snap it, but obviously I'd cut it off cleanly. And what I'd do is I cut it off just above the ring here. That way I think it's unlikely to snap off. It's not protruding so massively from the top of the Sentinel like the current aerial is, but I think it would make it so that you get the aerials, but you're not having to have a bunch of broken bits on your model. You've just sort of gone for a small, short aerial design. That's how I would fix that out of the bag. Because looking at this right now, I can tell you, after a few tournaments, I'm going to have a lot of stumpy aerials going around. So I might as well have it so I can break it on my terms. Another thing to notice on the top of the model is you can see over here we've got the exhausts. Now these are very different to the current Sentinel exhaust. They've got a curved exhaust pipe here. The current Sentinel has a straight up one. And also the current Sentinel exhaust, actually the exhaust pipe almost goes out forwards rather than backwards. If you take a look at your old Sentinel model, you'll see where that straight up pipe is cut off. It's actually cut off in a direction like that, so the smoke would come out that way. So it's interesting that they've actually changed that, so it's now more of a rounded design, and it's coming out over the back. Another interesting point to note is that these don't appear to have all of the exhaust holes that the old Sentinel kit had as well. These seem more intact. They remind me a bit like the Lehman Russ exhausts that you find on the Lehman Russ battle tank. To me, this may be an indication that they've taken the Lehman Russ one. It's a digital asset these days. They've shrunk it down and they've made it appropriate for the size of the Sentinel. Now, I have no issue with that, bringing exhausts in line and making them a bit more standardized. That's fine with me. It's just an interesting little design change that they've gone for. One thing to note that they do appear to have a Sentinel on both sides, so it's still got a dual exhaust system. It's not just one exhaust pipe on the back. So another new feature that we've seen on the new Sentinel kit is this exhaust or air intake. I imagine that's more of an air intake, sucking cool air into the engine, and the exhaust air coming out of the back here. That is actually an improvement over what we've currently got. Some people might say, oh, that's a brand new part. Well, it kind of is and it isn't. If you take a look at the old Sentinel kit, on its left shoulder, there is a little grate here, and I've never really known what it's for, but I imagine it was actually meant to be an air intake. So they've gone for a much more exaggerated design on the new kit, rather than being just a little grate that's just sort of stuck on the shoulder and you don't really know what it's for. It's actually a very prominent air intake. That's kind of interesting. I think maybe it's a little big, but it's only a small gripe. Overall, I'd actually quite like the improved design of the Sentinel, both the Scout and the Armored variant. Now, we'll get to the canopy and stuff in just a moment. Let's continue with a little bit of the accoutrement, the extra bits on the side of the vehicle. So here, where you've got this bag stowed and with some other little like roll mats and stuff like that that have been strapped in, that is where the searchlight used to go for the Sentinel. And you can see now the searchlight is down here. So that's just an extra little bit of detailing. And the searchlight is actually an option that you can put on the side. Now, interestingly, speaking of options on the side, you can see that this Armor Sentinel has a searchlight, but this one, the Scout Sentinel, has a Sentinel chainsaw. To me, that implies that you will no longer be able to take searchlights and smoke launchers and Sentinel chainsaws all on one vehicle. You're going to have to pick. But that, to me, also says that those are all going to have special rules that you'll be able to use. So there'll probably be a paid upgrade. I have heard that the searchlight does have a special rule. And what it does is it's more of a like an Auspex-y searchlight-y kind of thing rather than just a straight-up searchlight. And what it does is it actually removes light cover from an enemy unit that you're shooting at. So that would be quite cool. I totally have that as a paid upgrade. If I had to pick between like a Scout Sentinel, which was actually relatively good in combat, or an Armor Sentinel that could blast people from range and ignore their cover, that's actually quite good. And it means that both of those options are totally valid. I mean, I know we're going off on a tangent here, but we'll circle back around to this in a moment. But I really like the idea of like Plasma and Las Armor Sentinels, removing cover and blasting opponents, and Heavy Flamer Scout Sentinels with Sentinel Chainsaws running harassment. That sounds like some nice, cool combinations, and we're actually getting some use out of these extra bits now. But for now, going back to the model itself, I will drop any sort of rules, things that I know of in as we're going along. But going back to the model itself, you can see we've got an extra bit of armor here. This wasn't present on the old model in any way, shape or form. And you can see this is actually present on both the Armored and Scout Sentinel. So a little bit of extra armor plating, almost a bit like a wheel arch, but more like a leg arch that you can see above here. I think that might be slightly high up. If you think about it, it's not really protecting anything apart from this little bit of top area here. I would quite like to see that lower down and create a more comprehensive armored fronting, especially on the outside. There's just a big gap in the armor here, and that just, it doesn't really make sense to me. So I think that that's a little bit of a gripe I've got. I feel like that should be brought down here so it makes a more full armored fronting. At the moment, it doesn't really feel like it's doing anything. Maybe it's more of a leg up, a way that the pilot gets into the cockpit, I don't know, but it looks more like a wheel arch, and it also looks a bit more like an extra bit of armor to me. Now, moving down the leg itself, you can see that this bit is relatively similar to what we've got on the current Sentinel. There is a little T-bar at the bottom on the current Sentinel here. That's now gone. But what is interesting is this bit, this sort of knee joint here, and you can see it here as well, that has changed significantly. That is actually smooth on the current Sentinel, and now it is ridged, as you can see here. Moving back along here, you can see that's pretty similar to what we've got on the current Sentinel kit, but you don't have the really big looped extended cable that you do have on the current Sentinel kit, although there's a hint that there's a little bit of cable in the back there, that little bit of red there that you can see there, but no longer have we got the big loop that used to go on the back of every Sentinel leg. Moving down a bit more, you can see we've got the classic piston. However, there is a slight difference. This is now more of a screw than a piston on the back part of the foot. And then also you've got the classic ball on the end of the Sentinel foot there. However, this looks a little bit different. I don't know what you guys think, but the old Sentinel ball used to clip right in. To the Sentinel foot, and that made it, I felt it made it stronger, but it also meant that whenever the Sentinel leg snapped, and I've seen a lot of snapped Sentinel legs, the ball got kind of stuck in there, and so it was almost impossible to get the ball out, and then you had to try and glue on top of a quite a narrow, basically trying to glue these two bits together. Whilst it looks a bit weird, because it just sort of, look, if you actually look at it closely, it just looks like it's just sat on there, just resting. It's a bit unusual. There's nothing holding it in place. Whilst it looks a bit strange, I think that is a smart move from Games Workshop from a modeling perspective, because it means if this bit snaps now, it should snap here or here, which should make it a lot easier to repair. So whilst it looks a bit strange, I think from a real life sort of modeling perspective, that is an overall improvement. Overall, Sentinel leg is basically the same as it was. It's just had a few slight design changes, a little screw there, a little ridge there, no T-bar, no loopy cable at the back there. Now, the Armor Sentinel, of course, as you can see, has loads of additional armor plates on it. I suspect that it's the same leg, and then you get these extra bits to glue on. I don't think they're going to give you 2 sets of Sentinel legs. That would be kind of mad. So I suspect that you've obviously got a bit, this is a big armor plate here. You've got a bit of a knee pad here. Interesting, there are 2 different kinds of knee pad if you look. You've got a ridged one here and a smooth one here for transfers. I wonder if they'll give you the option to do 2 ridges or 2 smooths, or maybe it's always going to be one of each. Of the 2 big armor plates here, again, you can see one just sort of normal armor plate, and then one here, which has got a big iron loop hanging off the side of it. Not sure what that's for. Maybe it's a little bit of extra design choice. And then down here, these 2 are pretty much the same. And then down here, you've got these 2, which are pretty much the same. This little bit of ankle protection, very, very reminiscent of the current Sentinel kit. That's, you know, that's where those sort of, you used to clip those, the ball socket into those. But as you can see, they're now sort of added on. I think, again, that's probably a clever design choice because it makes it look like the old Sentinel kit. It hides that sort of weird idea that it's just that the ball socket is sort of floating on top. But it means that when it snaps, again, it should snap at that clean break point there. Depending on obviously how you glue. If you just jam this thing up with glue, you know, it might snap in a not quite so convenient way. If it was me, I really don't like the way it's sort of just floating there. So even if I was building a scout variant, I'd probably take this little bit of ankle protection and just put it down there to make it look a bit better. Now, moving back up here to the main part, the canopy, it has changed quite a lot. Okay, now the first thing to mention is the door itself has actually changed. That used to be the sort of the handle was much lower down. It also used to have an Aquila on the door, and when you were building the Scout variant, the door was actually much taller. This is actually almost I'd say a third shorter than the current door. I know it's only a small thing, but it's an sort of important, interesting thing to note. And then the front obviously is much smoother as well. This used to be, even on the Scout variant, you used to get a very prominent extra bit of armor plate on the front. And in fact, it had 3 layers. You had the base, the armor plate, and then like another armor plate, whereas now it's just 2 layers. You can see that on both. Now it's just base, an extra bit of armor, base, an extra bit of armor. It used to literally be base, extra armor again. That's interesting. Another thing to note is, of course, where they've now put this side socket here. There used to be an extra panel there. That's now gone. And so this is, you've sort of still got the top bit of it, but, you know, that's where the new ball socket is now for the either the smoke launcher or the searchlight or the Sentinel chainsaw. Another interesting thing to note, which I'm not a fan of, again, it's a small gripe. Overall, I'm really positive about the new Sentinel model, but there are a few things, just a small minor few gripes that I'd like to point out. And one of them is that it seems like, based on these models that we've seen here, that you're not going to have the variety of fronts that you used to have on the Sentinel. You see, on the old kit, you used to have 2 or 3 different kinds of front armor you could put on it. You had one with just a little small Aquila, you had one with like a small Aquila and an extra searchlight that was very popular with the Scout Sentinels, and then you had one that just had a big full-on Aquila. Not this winged skull thing that we're seeing at the moment, but like big full-on Aquila on the front. That's how I built all my old Sentinels, and I loved them with those big, bold Aquilas on the front, striding forward, armored Sentinel style. Whereas now, if you look at both this Sentinel and this Sentinel, it's very clear that you just have the one front, and that's molded in. Again, they're not going to give you an extra thing to glue on there. That's very obviously molded in there. So it's a minor thing. It makes it look a little bit more smooth, maybe a little bit more mechanicus. Maybe you like that kind of thing. But for me, I really wish they'd kept that whole, you know, add little bits on the front to really differentiate between those Scout Sentinels and those Armor Sentinels. The reason I suspect they've got rid of that is A, to make it easier. You know, if you only produce one front, it's much more cost effective than producing 3 extra optional fronts. And B, because they're bringing in rules for things like searchlights and like smoke launchers and like Sentinel chainswords, they don't want an extra Scout Sentinel front that has a little searchlight on it in case that confuses people, or in case, you know, people try and be a bit naughty and go, oh no, it has got the searchlight, it's not got the smoke launcher, and then maybe they go into the next game and, you know, maybe it's a tournament and they go, oh no, it's got the searchlight, not the, you know, not the smoke launcher, the way around. Do you know what I mean? So they could, maybe I'm being a little bit paranoid there. I suspect it's probably just cost effectiveness, but I think it would also probably have something to do with the fact that they are introducing rules and they wouldn't want there to be any kind of confusion or tomfoolery. So moving on up, we have the main top part of the canopy itself. The Scout variant is fairly similar to what we've got at the moment. I do think this looks a little bit sturdier than the current Scout one. I have found with the current Scout Sentinel variant, it's very tricky to get those bits lined up because it's very, very thin plastic. That looks a bit sturdier to me. Let me know what you guys think. Sentinel Pilot does look significantly different. You can see here, similar to like we had with the Field Ordnance Battery, you've got a sort of a shoulder pad there. That's not an armored pad. It's more like a badge, a bit like with the old Steel Legion models. And it looks like you're wearing the sort of classic light flak jacket. Maybe it's like a flak vest rather than the full-on flak armor. And different head design. We've got a peaked cap now. Pretty certain we didn't have a peaked cap in the old kit. And again, the pilot just looks very much like it's been brought in line. Overall, I really like the look of this Sentinel pilot. I really like the idea of having a little field cap and all that kind of stuff. I really hope that we'll be able to do some head swaps though, because I don't want everyone to have the same head. And I hope the kit comes with several different head options as well too. One other thing to mention about this kit, which is interesting, is it should only have 2 options for canopies, whereas the current kit actually has 3. Some of you may or may not know that, but the current kit actually does have this sort of classic stripped down railing look. It's got another Scout variant look, which is a little bit more armor, but doesn't have a roof on it. And then it's got the fully armored look, which is similar to this, where you've got the full armor and you've got the roof on top. So interestingly, I think they've trimmed that down now, because I think that some people got confused that there were 2 Scout variants, and sometimes Scout variants looked a lot like the armored variants. So I think they've basically gone, look, you're getting 2 variants, and one is going to be very clearly the Scout, and one is going to be very clearly the armored Sentinel option. Now, speaking of the armored Sentinel, let's take a look at the canopy for this bad boy, and it has changed a lot. And now some people love this, some people hate it. I quite like the look of it, although I do have one major gripe with it, which we'll be getting back to. It's such a big gripe, it may stop me from buying the model. I know, controversial, right? I'm only really joking, guys. But we'll come back to that in a moment. It's changed so now that it has 1 big vision slit rather than 2 smaller ones. I mean, that just makes sense. Why would you have a big sort of gap in the middle on your vision slits? I know it doesn't look as cool, like it hasn't got eyes anymore, but yeah, it does make sense. So that's obviously a big change. You've got a little light underneath there as well, which is kind of cool. And obviously you've got a little side window here as well. Good to see that we're still getting the side windows, although those are significantly smaller. Those are significantly smaller, so the side windows are a bit smaller and the front windows are much bigger. Just a sort of interesting note there. Now, what is this gripe? What is this gripe that is so bad that I might not even pick up any of these armored Sentinels? There's no window wipers. Think about it, guys. If you go look at the old Sentinel kit, it had little window wipers on all the windows. Oh, you don't want to... How if this rains, how is this guy meant to see? How's he meant to see in early morning condensation? Fogs up the glass. How's he meant to see and walk around? He needs his window wipers, boys. So GW, you need to fix that. You need to get on that right away. Make window wipers great again. That's all I'm saying. I'm only teasing, man. Obviously, that's not going to stop me from buying the model. But I did think it was kind of cute that the old Sentinel did have little window wipers and everything, and the new one doesn't. Last few little bits to mention. We've got what looks like a little smoke launcher up here, which is interesting, because obviously we've seen, and we'll be taking a close look at that in a moment, there's a big smoke launcher option on the side here. Maybe, I'm not sure. I think that is a little micro smoke launcher. And obviously, of course, we've got a hunter killer missile on the side here. This looks like a similar but different design to what we currently have. It looks a little bit chunkier. It's interesting, if you look at the history of Sentinel and just Imperial Guard hunter killers in general, they've gone from super chunky to a little less chunky in a big box to like super thin, and now we seem to have gone back to a bit more chunky again. There's never been the same design of hunter killer from kit to kit. It's crazy. They're always mixing it up, man. Anyway, so that sort of covers what I wanted to talk about with this picture. Let's take a look at some of the other pictures we've seen on Sentinel and talk what details we can glean from them. So moving on to another picture, you can see we've got the Scout Sentinel here. There's a few things we can glean. So you've got an extra bit of stowage there if you don't want to have a hunter killer on the side. You can see that we've got the new exhaust assembly, a little bit more detail there, and you can see the extra armor on the back. Also, you can obviously see the big Sentinel butt plug. I'm telling you guys, I'm not having that on my models. I'm just not gluing it in. I think it just looks really, really silly. So I'm just not going to have that in. So moving on to the weapons, though, you can see we've got a new las cannon design. No power pack up here anymore. Now it's integrated into the weapon and hanging a little bit lower down. And also generally just what feels like a very different las cannon design here. And also we've got a new autocannon design as well. Overall, I really like the design of these new weapons. That autocannon actually might be my favorite, even if it's not very good. It certainly looks good. Now, if we just take a look at all the pictures of the Sentinel that have been revealed so far, then we can see all of the weapon options that it comes with. And it looks like the Sentinel won't be getting any new weapon options, but it won't be losing any either. So if we take a look at this first picture, you see we've got the multi-laser, and you can see we've got the plasma cannon. Look at the second picture. We see we've got the las cannon and we've got the auto cannon. If we go back to the article that GW did a few months ago, of course, you've got plasma cannon there as well. But you can also see there's a heavy flamer there. And you can see a missile launcher there. You can also see that sort of smoke launcher thing that I was talking about before. Interestingly, it definitely looks like a smoke launcher, but you've got a little smoke launcher up here as well. So maybe this will be some sort of advanced smoke launcher, or maybe even some sort of grenade pack. Not sure there. Also, you can see there's a little ammo box you can put on the side if you want, instead of the backpack. So yeah, but it's really cool to see that we will be keeping all of the weapon options, but I don't think we'll be gaining any new weapon options for the Sentinels, which is a little bit of a shame. Always good to get new weapon options, but you know what? As long as we don't lose anything, that's a good thing. So that covers everything I wanted to talk about in today's video. I mean, overall, I really like the new Sentinel kit. I'm really hoping it's not too much bigger than the current one. If it is, it's definitely going to make it difficult to run them side by side. If it does end up looking like it's going to be much bigger, what I'll probably do with my current Sentinels is just run them as scout variants, and then just run any of the new Sentinels as the armored variants. Even if I'm building them with the new canopy and all that kind of stuff with the scout canopy, I'll probably, if they're obviously bigger and chunkier, then I shall run them as the armored variant. Overall, I really like the new Sentinel model, apart from the big Sentinel pneumatic butt plug. I think that really just needs to go. That was just a terrible design choice. But overall, I really like the new model. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comment section below. Do you like the new Sentinel? Do you not like the new Sentinel? What do you prefer, the armored variant or the scout variant? Will you be picking these models up? Will you be getting as many of the old ones as you can before they go off the shelves? What are you thinking? Let me know down in that comment section. If you've enjoyed today's video, then make sure you smash that like button like it's a big titty Eldar girlfriend. And if you want to make sure you never miss an episode, because I'm going to be doing more deep dives, then make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. One thing to mention is when the Codex comes out, I'm going to be doing very in-depth unit reviews, going over all of the different options and how I think the units can be used. So if you want to see that kind of information as well, make sure you are subscribed, because the Codex isn't going to be far away, boys. Now, if you've really enjoyed today's video and you want to go the extra mile when it comes to supporting the channel, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. One of the big perks of being a channel member or Patreon is you get access to the Mordian Glory Discord, and it's a really active community. We've got over 400 active people in there right now. There's always someone to chat to. We discuss everything from tactics to memes to just general 40k, even lore, and there's also things like painting competitions and events going on all the time as well. So if that sounds fun to you, then consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. And I just want to take a moment now and say a huge thank you to all of our latest channel members and patrons. So a big thank you to Sohal, Nerdily Delicious, Daniel Machascu, Jonathan Cedarkrantz, Mark Strengdor, Master GT Jackom, Santo Prime, Jake Hughes, Dumfries Gamer TV, Yeri, Joe Hills, Oliver, The Red Scout, Thanum, Vincent Colson, James Stables, James Harden, Jason Dossett, Fatton's Hobby, Michael Enright, S73WY, DeSal Man, Nino P, Andrew Layson, Felix Macbeth, Jason May, Herbert Hoover, Big Man 7333, Edward Sullivan, Bob McGrayson, Migraine, Marcus Roberts, Abyss Watcher, Blake M, William Pagonis, Liam Cox, Jonathan Cervantes, Flying Gaze, Michael 2, Stuart Hawkins, Simon Keefe, Caleb Robertson, Ryan Nash, Enos Ritter, JC Shirtulf, Rogel Dawn, Rookie, Jazz Hands, Freeform Rue, Rusty Shackleford, Aircast, Gareth Evans, Calvinair, Fred Vith, Uni Mandabil, Luke DeBoss, Ocean Games, John Thiessen, Crash Quest 88, Stu, Roaring Skull, Sailor P, DSX01, Matthias, Daniel Kelly, David Patrick, Definitely Not Trotsky, Omit, Aaron, Felix JC, Delta Loco, Raziel, Krieg Kenny, Mint W, Gene H, Blackjack Last Shack, Mr. Lackey, Laverin Boso, Games and Theory, Alex Chilver, Ross S, Dave Owen, Ugg88, Marchudu McGee, Bodger, Justin S, Gold 5, Hoop Dog, Smolaki, Kerry Colbinson, Ivan Terashaki, Pac-Man, and Blood Tree. Thank you guys. Wow, we've had so many new channel members recently. It's been amazing. In fact, we actually recently broke over 600 channel members, which is just incredible. But let's not forget the new Patreon support as well. So a big shout out and thank you to Thomas, Texas Red, The Soundman, LARP Analysis, Madcap Miguel, Fox T, Josh, Glenn Torp, Isaac H. Chapman, Christian Chadwell, Evie Wilkinson, Tech Guy 122, and Hound the Red. Thank you guys for your ongoing Patreon support. I also want to say a huge heartfelt thank you to all of the top tier Patreon supporters. These are the War Masters, the people that have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to supporting my channel, and I am eternally grateful to them. So a massive thank you to Navy Veteran, Philip French, Ross Miller, Tekwal, Alex Dengal, John Stubbs, Nicholas Walsh, Swordfish Trombone, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and of course Sly Varney. Thank you guys for your incredibly generous support. It really does make a huge difference. I hope everyone enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.